Well, Barrie seems set up to distribute the COVID-19 vaccine at a rapid rate. Many people with disabilities and advocates say that they're being passed over in the rollout strategy. Specifically, as things stand, those with intellectual or developmental disabilities aren't prioritized in the current vaccination plan. When watching this interview, things may be different, but currently across Ontario, many people with disabilities need direct care, in-home support, and more. Especially for those living in congregate living situations, that close contact means physical distancing is far more difficult. And people with intellectual disabilities and developmental disorders are 3 times more likely to die of COVID-19. Camphill Communities in Barrie penned a press release calling for the provincial government to rethink its vaccine strategy. Because currently only one of their residents qualify for the vaccine because of the person's age. However, the rest of the residents, or the people who live at Camphill, won't qualify until the second stage of vaccines opens up. That could be as late as the start of July. Camphill Communities is a non-for-profit collection of residential homes where people with developmental and intellectual disabilities can live, work, and learn together. I spoke with various members of that community in a Zoom call. Larry Palmer is Camphill's executive director. Annette Parson is a resident of Camphill in Barrie, and so is Jamie Curry. They both joined us on the call. Catherine Killam is Camphill's community development officer, and Anthony Wheeler has been a longtime visitor to Camphill, hanging out with friends there, cooking and sharing meals and playing games at their facilities. As well on the call is Elizabeth Muller. She's the director of Camphill's board and is also a PhD candidate who's long studied and consulted on policy across Canada and Ontario that impacts the lives of people with disabilities. In this conversation, we focus on access to vaccines, but also about how life has changed at Camphill and how some members of their community have navigated the uncertain times of the pandemic, as well as what might be next after the vaccine arrives.
This COVID, that they're changing, that now they said, wait till it's orange before you can do anything. Like anything you want to do, anything, you have to wait till the next color.
Okay.
It's part of the coronavirus that's going. There is another virus coming soon. I heard from my mom, so she said just be aware that if you get the second virus, you're not protected from the second virus.
I was wondering, Annette, what are some of the things, you mentioned that there's a lot of things you can't do. What are some of the things that you want to do that you can't do because of COVID?
The animal shelter. That is something I would like to do.
Yeah, like volunteering at a shelter. And right now, with the restrictions, you can't do that. Is that
So I can't do it until it's orange.
Oh, okay.
That's what I was told by Carly.
I was wondering, maybe next, I'll on my screen next up is Elizabeth. Elizabeth, how has COVID changed your life and your professional life, your professional focus, where your research is going? How has that affected you?
Yeah, I think COVID has affected me in a couple of key ways. I think first and foremost, living with a disability, it's been more challenging to access some of the services and supports that we need to live in the community. And it's also been more challenging to know what we can do safely outdoors, especially if you live with a visual disability. It's challenging to be able to read those signs. It's definitely affected me that I can't go to campus to go to school. I go to Western University, which is in London, and I live here in Toronto. So it's meant being able to only connect online, and that's definitely made my first year of PhD studies a little bit more challenging, but there's been some perks to that as well. And I think it's, also affected my ability to continue with outdoor physical activities, which is something I enjoy doing.
Oh, okay. And I definitely want to touch back on, you mentioned your work in university and the studies there. So I'm going to make a note of that and I'll come back to that after this. First, I was wondering, maybe Catherine, could you go next? How has COVID affected you? And you can answer that personally and professionally as well.
professionally, it's had a big impact. So one of the key features of my role is I'm the community development officer. So it's creating opportunities for adults with disabilities to engage with community members. And because of COVID, we can't have community members at our location anymore. So we used to do a lot of volunteer activities or just, getting together with community. Camphill, a big focus is being together and festivals and sharing food together. So none of that can happen anymore. So it's more about facilitating virtual opportunities, which we all know isn't the same as being in person with people you really want to connect with.
And likewise, I'll definitely touch on some of that later. But next on to you, Jamie. How has COVID affected your life?
COVID is the fact that I usually get to see my mom every second Sunday, and now that we usually have lunch together. Now that we can do it in my home, I really miss doing that, because we used to have lots of fun doing that, and watching TV shows together. So I just really miss that, and I miss going to this Salvation Army soup kitchen and helping out there, and being a volunteer there.
Oh, okay. And when you're talking about eating lunch with your mom, did she used to
Oh
come
no,
to?
my visit with my mom here in Terrasol.
Oh, okay, I understand. Oh, okay, sounds good. I was wondering, lastly, Anthony, how has COVID affected your life?
I've been exercising every morning, and I do miss my my two brothers and my sister. But times like this, it's hard for us with the COVID, and I miss them a lot.
It seems like what a lot of you have mentioned is missing people that you can't see right now, right? And I'm kind of similar. I haven't seen my brother now for over 2 years, in the past year, because of COVID. I was wondering, and maybe I'll direct this to you, Larry, the discussion around vaccines, and I'm wondering, from your perspective, what's been the messaging around vaccine delivery and the vaccine priority in organizations like yours that work alongside adults with disabilities?
Yeah, the information flow has been really staggered and at times overwhelming, trying to disseminate, do we qualify or not, at what period of time, being ready to move very quickly. I mean, we just recently started staff vaccinations that we didn't think were going to occur for another month, which was good news, but being prepared and ready to go at a moment's notice. And in particular with people we support, that's been a very stressful process, because we had hoped right from the beginning that all the individuals, Anthony and Jamie and Annette and all the people we support, would have been prioritized way earlier than we are now. COVID has hit some organizations very, very hard with outbreaks and some deaths. So it's been somewhat difficult at times trying to disseminate all that information and who's telling us what. There's been, in the early days, it was, my goodness, 30 and 40 emails a day for the first 6 months of different types of information and how to protect people and changes in routines and protective personal equipment. All those things have been challenging at times.
For sure. And I'm wondering, Annette, or Jamie or Anthony, do you want the vaccine? And why would you want to get the vaccine, or why would you not want to get the vaccine?
Yes, I want the vaccine because I because because I because I because I would because if I get the vaccine, then I wouldn't have to worry about getting the COVID, and then maybe that way, once I get the vaccine, I can I could just hopefully, if we all get the vaccines, then we can all get back to norm, get things back to normal. We can get back to doing what we used to do, and 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 all that, because that's all that I miss, because I don't like having to stay home just doing workshops all the time. I like getting out in the community and working and doing work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I was wondering, Annette, do you want to get that vaccine, and why or why not do you want to get the vaccine?
The reason is the volunteer thing. They said you must have your vaccine so you don't spread it to another worker that is going to help you, so that that person doesn't get it from me.
Okay, and so the vaccine would allow you to go back to your work at the animal shelter. Is
Yeah, I want to
probably
work at the animal shelter, but in order to do that, you have to have the vaccine and the booster.
okay.
Sam, I should clarify that we've been rather fortunate in Simcoe. We've had some staff in Simcoe agencies that have contracted COVID, but we haven't had any. We've only had a couple of outbreaks, and at Camphill, we've been very fortunate in that we haven't had any staff or people we support contract COVID. But throughout the province, certainly in the hotspots, it's been a real problem.
Yeah, and Elizabeth, I'd like to ask you next about the vaccine delivery and the certain risks that apply. But just before that, I'll direct it to you, Anthony. Do you want to get the vaccine, and why not? Why not? Do you want to get the vaccine?
I like to get the vaccine so I can go back to my programs and helping out in the community and keep in touch.
Yeah, for sure. I was wondering, speaking of the question of vaccines, Elizabeth, Catherine mentioned that you've been doing a lot of research and advocacy work with the vaccine delivery, specifically around the heightened risk that many people with disabilities face when it comes to COVID-19. Could you talk a little bit about that and why priority is so important?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of risk factors. The first of which I want to talk about is that a lot of us as individuals with disabilities, whether that be physical, developmental, require assistance in our homes on a daily basis to perform the activities associated with daily living. And that's not negotiable. So I know right now we're told stay home, don't have people over, but for many of my friends and colleagues, that's not an option. They need that support in the home. And so right there, you're at heightened risk because you have somebody coming in. And there's been a lot of issues around getting funding for individuals in their home to have PPE who live with a disability, but also people with disabilities who are in the congregate settings are at greater risk because they're with other people. And staff are coming in from the community and they're taking all the precautions that they can, but there is still that risk factor, or anybody who's living in their home with a disability who has an attendant coming in to provide support, that attendant's coming from the community. So there's a risk factor. There's also risk factors associated with health. So we know that people sometimes with intellectual or developmental disabilities might have a little bit more difficulty understanding hand hygiene protocols, and as well may have difficulty understanding how to put on a mask and how to wear a mask. And for folks with physical disabilities, the challenge around mask wearing might be that they can't independently physically put it on. And so if that's the case, then you've got somebody else assisting you who's potentially touching your face. So again, that's another barrier. But I think certainly at heightened risk, many people have underlying complex medical needs and conditions. And so that underlying complexity, again, makes individuals with disabilities a little bit more, or not a little bit, a lot more vulnerable. But also just, in terms of disability, there's a huge percentage of individuals with disabilities, 49%, that are unemployed in Canada. And so people are living below the poverty line. They're not getting good nutrition. They're not getting good health care to begin with. So they're already immune compromised in that way as well. And one thing I wanted to add, a huge barrier for all individuals with disabilities is if we go to the hospital today for any reason, we may not be able to have our support person with us. And for some of us, that's a matter of life and death. So that's a huge obstacle as well. I hope I covered everything, but Larry, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, no, that was really well said, right to the T. Yeah, what we've learned is congregate living of any type is far more risky than people living alone. And we rely on staff throughout COVID to do the right things, to be careful, to practice all those elements that restrict or prevent risk. And as Elizabeth said, you know, in congregate living, staff are coming into the home. That's what we do. Staff are in the homes, large number of staff throughout. So that's what was surprising, because, you know, it was identified early that congregate care, like long-term care, was very high risk. And we understood that. It's just why we didn't get prioritized in the same manner. It's been rather shocking. It seems so obvious to me that we would have been included in phase one. So there's been a tremendous amount of advocacy going on to try and change that view, but rather shocking that it wasn't acknowledged right up front with COVID.
And Elizabeth, or anyone else who may want to answer, did you get any satisfying answers from the Ford government around why the vaccine rollout didn't account for that? Because I know in other provinces like BC, I'm pretty sure people with disabilities were in the first wave of vaccine rollouts. Has there been any answer about why?
I'm a part of an organization called Citizens with Disabilities Ontario. We did send a letter to Joel Harding, who's the NDP disability critic. We sent a letter to Christine Elliott. We sent one to Doug Ford. We have not heard back. And interestingly enough, there's been some really good media coverage around this issue. But unfortunately, no, I have not heard back. And I don't know why we haven't had the same priority as they have in other provinces.
Yeah, that's a good question, Sam. I think sometimes people with disabilities, their voice is not heard. And our sector in particular, I think I can't say we were forgotten, certainly we weren't forgotten, but, you know, we didn't seem to be making the right noise, I guess, for our sector, or typically, I think a lot of times our sector can be forgotten. We're much smaller than the long-term care world out there, and so it was a problem.
And I know Camphill can't speak for all the different organizations and different experiences, but just from Camphill's perspective, what support have you received from the Ontario government, if any? Has there been any sort of support or messaging that's helped out?
Well, yes, a number of things. First of all, the acknowledgement that our staff, that these circumstances were very stressful, very demanding, and that their work need to be honored. And so there were two situations where the hourly salary was raised by the government. So I applaud them for that. And the very first situation, it was $4 an hour, and the second, it was $3 an hour. We're hoping that that's made permanent, because it's a demanding job and a very important role that staff plays. So we hope that that continues. I think the ministry's worked very hard. We were very nervous at the beginning about the access to protective personal equipment, but that changed fairly quickly. It was pretty stressful in the beginning, though, because we weren't ready, and we didn't have access to enough of those items. So that's changed. I think the ministry's tried really hard to stay in touch with us. I think our voice has been heard. I think if we weren't on the radar prior to COVID, that the developmental services sector is certainly on the radar now. So I think government has woken up to that and tried to be more supportive of that.
I'm wondering, maybe I'll direct this one to you, Annette. What has life been like at Camphill during COVID-19? Has there been things in your everyday schedule that have changed a lot, or different things happening, like do you have to wear a mask a lot? What's it like?
The thing that has changed is we no longer have the cafe. We just have now the herbery and the garden during these times, and it's kind of hard to kind of say, okay, we're going to do this today, when we automatically have to make a change in the schedule to fit the, personal people too that need also care too. Like in my home, there is like 5 of us, like 5 companions, and each companion who, like, especially Peter getting older, he needs more care than I do. And the other ones too, like Joey needs personal care too, and he's getting older. He's not a young chick like I am, whereas the younger people can take care of themselves.
Oh, okay, and because of COVID and physical distancing and stuff, you're saying that your schedule has changed a lot because people need
Yes, and I
care.
can't sit at the table. They said social distancing meaning 6 feet from the person you're standing.
Mhm. I'm wondering, Jamie, have you found the same? How has your kind of daily schedule changed because of COVID-19?
Well, my my well my schedule is that my schedule is that I used to go to wood shop, and that's something that that I like, that I used to like doing until COVID hit, and then that's when Shannon she had to say, Jamie, you can't go to the wood shop anymore. And so I changed my workshopping, and just make a choice of going to the pottery, and then or going to Herbery, and then I didn't like going to Herbery, so the only workshop I can go to now, which I like going to two, but I can only go to one, is going to the potteries, because I like going to two workshops. Now that's changed. Now I only have one thing in the afternoon and none in the mornings, and then I find it very boring in the mornings. I like getting out in the mornings, just getting out and doing work, and keep myself busy. Just keep myself busy. So I would I hope that I could change so I can get back to my two workshops again.
Oh, okay. And I'm wondering for you, Anthony, Larry mentioned a lot of new guidelines in order to keep people safe and stop the spread of COVID-19. I'm wondering, how has different guidelines and different new procedures changed your daily schedule in this era of COVID?
But usually I can't tell. I come in and do the coffee and help make lunches and doing the karaoke. But with COVID, it's hard to do. And with the exercising, that has been changed a lot with me with the COVID.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's Catherine, did you want to chime in there? Or...
I was just going to ask or bring it up because I know Anthony, everyone had a lot of volunteer work and paid work. So I'm wondering, Anthony, if you're still able to do those jobs or if that stopped because of COVID as well.
Well, I used to work at Harvey's and Starbucks, but not anymore of this COVID stuff.
Okay, so because of COVID, there's kind of no hours for you at those locations, or are you still working there sometimes, or what's that like?
Well, before the COVID hits, I went to work to Harvey's and Starbucks on Saturdays, and they really missed me a lot over there.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Elizabeth, we're talking a lot about how many things have changed and how many daily schedules have changed, but for you, as someone who's researched and consulted on accessible policy and more for quite a long time, how overall, how would you rate Ontario's handling of COVID-19 in terms of equitable solutions, if that makes sense. So how would you rate their handling of COVID-19 insofar as it affects people with disabilities?
Yeah, I guess I would say prongs to that. So there's a lot of people with disabilities that are living in long-term care. Unfortunately, that's due to many factors, one of which is not enough space in the community and not enough supports. And so the big question there is the fact that people in long-term care haven't been prioritized or treated well, and COVID has exposed a lot of issues in the long-term care sector that we've known about for a while. But I worry for my disabled brothers and sisters who haven't been outside in a year, haven't seen family and friends because they're in long-term care. I would also say that the $600 that we did finally obtain in the summer was only given to people with a disability tax credit, and only after quite a bit of advocacy and activism. And so unfortunately that excludes a lot of people. Not everybody has the DTC. So that's, and I'm hoping that there will be more payments, because a lot of people, especially those who live in their own homes, are paying out of their own pockets for PPE, and that's quite costly. Maybe they're paying extra for cleaning because they're wanting to keep their place more clean as people from the community are coming in to provide support. I guess I would also say that, even with regards to the vaccination, the lack of clarity about when is it going to be rolled out, what phase are we in, who's eligible. I think there needs to be a lot more clarity there. I'll turn it over to Larry to add any additional thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. I mean, one of the dilemmas has been that the health units in Ontario have all kind of done things differently on a different scale, earlier, different timeframes, and that's been confusing. And trying to, one of the things we've tried to reach out to health units insofar as we can help, right? We could do mobile clinics. We have a number of individuals at this point that wouldn't travel very easily to a clinic somewhere. So we could host clinics, organize all our services together to make things easier. So we've been trying to reach out to say we can help with this process.
And on that note, and I'll direct this to Larry, Catherine, Elizabeth, anyone who wants to answer. How is Camphill getting ready to transition into the later half of 2021, specifically as vaccines hopefully become more regularly available, more people get vaccinated? Will your current guidelines and restrictions change? And if so, how are you kind of preparing for this return to normal, if that makes sense? I know that's a very large question.
Yeah. And we're not sure what that's going to be, but we know that probably some of the personal protective equipment will probably have to stay in place for a while until the immunity, I guess, piece is solved in the general population. I think some of the learnings have been that we can probably use Zoom more often. We can connect with more people more frequently by continuing to do some Zoom, but that's been a challenge because we are in the people business, and there are some things that doing Zoom is just wearing us out. It's not personal, but there are times where it can be efficient and we can get things done. I think some of the cleaning procedures that we've implemented, there is some learnings there around how to be careful and how to reduce risk as we go forward.
And I want to be mindful of everyone's time, and my meeting here is timing out. But I was wondering to close down, and anyone can chime in. Is there anything I missed, or is there anything you want people to know about your experience living and working in this time of COVID-19?
I'll add a couple, but I don't want to monopolize here. One couple of things we've learned is you can't communicate enough. Every time you think you've communicated something, we've learned that during COVID. We've had to stay in touch with everybody as well as we can. You can't over communicate is something we've learned, and we learned that you can't appreciate people enough. You can't overdo it. Our staff have been absolutely fantastic during this. And Anthony and Annette and all the people that we support have been so good, so tolerant of this, losing all those visits that Annette and Jamie and Anthony have had with families. I mean, Anthony lives at home, so it's a little easier, but So it's just appreciating how much everybody has done throughout this. I want to put in a plug. It's interesting, across the world, the United Kingdom, the US, Sweden, Germany, and the Netherlands all prioritize persons with disabilities right up front. And it's disappointing that wouldn't have been done here. So I want to thank everybody, staff and families, and Anthony and Jamie and Annette and all the people we support for just being so tolerant of such a difficult time for this period of a year. Has been absolutely amazing. What a great team of people we have at Camphill, and there are great teams, lots of them out there doing the best they can.
And also too, I lost a friend this year, last year, due to he had lung cancer, and he was like a friend to me. So I really, really miss him. And I said to Mom, we should get in contact with Patricia and see if she can, once the COVID needle, hopefully the 2 needles happen, then I would like to go visit that friend and give her some moral support, because she lost her husband, and it's fair to say she lost him to lung cancer, which is a very hard thing to do. But I want to stay in contact with that person and see if she needs what she needs for help to get through that process.
I'm so sorry to hear that, Annette, about your friend. And yeah, I really hope we all can get vaccines so soon, and I really hope Camphill.
Same with me. My grandfather just died not that long ago, and my family, before the COVID was gonna happen, we were gonna have like a large funeral for my grandfather, and when the COVID hit, then our large funeral had to be canceled. So it only had to be a small, tiny funeral for my grandfather, and I didn't think it was. I didn't think it was quite the same having a small funeral than having a big funeral out, than having a big funeral, and saying our last goodbyes right at the same time. So now I missed that, but I was hoping that once we get our COVIDs done, that I can and if things get back to normal, then get back to my then go back to my grandparents' house, and maybe have a little visit with my family at my grandparents' house, and say and see how my grandmother's doing in person.
Yeah, I really hope that can happen soon, Jamie. And I wanted to thank everyone for sharing these stories and sharing the research and your experiences in this past year. Thanks for watching. To learn more about Camphill's request for a reconsideration of vaccines, as well as how life there has changed, check out the video description. Again, during these interviews, we by no means want to pretend we're providing a summary of how people with disabilities feel about the vaccine or about Ontario's handling of it. These are the individual experiences of people living at Camphill, as well as people that work and advise on their board.